Okay, this is one of those original art cards that I've been working on. What I did first, I inked her because I had already sketched her on there. And then I kind of laid out with magic markers, not Copic markers, but just magic markers because I don't have Copic markers. But I just kind of laid out some of the colors that I kind of am leaning toward for this one. And as you can see, I got it a little bit, you know, too bright for my liking. So I am going to get some just regular white acrylic paint. And I'm going to go over some of the areas just to make some highlights, and I'll let you watch me do that for a minute. First place I always like to start, I don't know why, it's in the hair right here. Like I said, that's magic markers. And sometimes you have to, this is that bristle paper, remember. You have to be careful and not get your paper too wet. I probably should have just done this on a little piece of canvas. And I probably will next time. And, you know, and it tones down that bright. You know, if you can just get your base color down, and you could have used real acrylic paint, or I really don't recommend watercolors when you're first starting out. Even me, I've been an artist for years and years and years, and I'm just now getting to where I kind of like putting a little bit of watercolor in mine, because I can control acrylic paint, but the watercolor likes to control me, so I don't really have any patience. But I'll show you how I use watercolor, and you might be surprised. I'm sure other artists do this, but see, I'm just kind of toning down that marker just with highlighted spots. And I keep having to wet the paint down a little bit, because that vellum paper, boy, it grabs and it just almost dries instantly. But see, I'm just putting a few highlights in here so you can actually, this is just, remember, this is just white acrylic paint, and which will look real nice when I'm done. And I want to say something real quick, and then I'll pause it. I've never exaggerated when I said that I spend as much time on a small one. This art card is only 2.5 by 3.5 inches. And I guess I try to get as much detail in one of these as I do like big paintings, because I like to, you know, put a lot of details and stuff like that. And even though it's really not necessary, that's just the way I do it, and it doesn't matter to me if it takes me 5 or 6 hours, you know, to work on one art card. And sometimes it does, but that's how come I've always told y'all that I kind of do several at one time. But I had remembered in another video I'd show you how I did this. Okay, now I'm going to pause it right here, and I'm just going to continue to do that, even in her tail, and then this little headdress and stuff like that. I'm going to highlight with white in a bunch of places, and then when I'm fixing to start the next stage, I'll attach that to this one, hopefully. Okay, here's what I've got done so far. Now remember, I used, you know, white acrylic paint to kind of go in there and put a lot of highlights. And now I'm fixing to use watercolor, just very little, because after I started doing this I decided that I don't like the color of that tail very much as I initially thought I would. So I will use some of my watercolors, and I'm sorry my stomach's growling. I still haven't ate lunch yet. But I'm just going to swipe my watercolors. It's a palette of 36. I believe it is, Low Cornell. I like using these, but as you can see, it's messy. But anyway, but this is, I love this palette because there's 36 different colors on here. And so now I'm probably the exact opposite of what other artists do. I just like to put my base stuff in, then the highlights. Then I like to go and put my shadows in. Maybe it's because I don't know what it is, but sometimes I have a little bit of trouble with color. And I guess it's just because I'm self-taught, and that's how come I do things the way I do, because I've never took college classes. I don't have an art degree. I have just always had to self-teach myself how to do things, and it's trial and error. But I'm going to be, and you'll see marks and stuff across the paper. Now I just barely wet that watercolor, just a drop. Let me put it over here. I'm going to use this color. I just put a drop in there, and I don't put it on there wet, wet, wet. I just kind of give it a second to let it dry a little. And then if I don't like the way it does, and see, I just kind of go over it a little bit. Now see where I've got that white, and see where it makes a nice highlight. I used to just leave it white, but I've gotten to a stage where now sometimes that kind of gets on my nerves, just leaving it bright white. And I'll just go over what I painted with the white acrylic, just with a very, very, very light touch. Of that watercolor, and it makes a nice highlight. And if I want to make it a little brighter, then what I'll do, I will put just solid white. I hate to use the word blobs, that's not what I'm meaning. Just a little bit more white with the acrylic, and then let it totally dry. Let it totally dry, and then just touch maybe like the next shade up, like this color, for that highlight. And if I do that, I'll film that. But now everywhere that I've got the white, I'm going back over top of it with that watercolor just very lightly, because remember, this is bristle. You can't get that paper wet or it'll start, you know, falling apart. Okay. Now I'm gonna do her hair with that, and then I'm gonna come back and maybe put a different color in that tail with the watercolor, and then I'll come back.